The year is 1923. Across the battered fields of Western Europe, a new terror casts a long shadow over the Allied advance. From the dense forests of the Ardennes to the sun-baked plains of Italy, a beast of steel, unparalleled in its destructive might, has entered the fray. This is the German Tiger I heavy tank, a weapon of war that would forever etch its name into the annals of military history, not just for its formidable power, but for the sheer dread it inspired in the hearts of those who faced it. For the Allied forces, the Tiger was more than just a tank. It was a psychological weapon, a symbol of German engineering superiority, an ironclad statement of defiance. Its very presence on the battlefield could halt an entire advance, force a tactical retreat, and shatter the morale of even the most seasoned troops. Imagine the scene: a column of Sherman tanks, the backbone of the Allied armored divisions, cautiously advancing through a French village. The air is thick with the smell of cordite and damp earth. Suddenly, a roar rips through the morning quiet, unlike any they've heard before. A dark, angular silhouette emerges from the tree line, its massive 88mm gun pointing with predatory precision. This isn't just another Panzer. This is a Tiger. The radio crackles with frantic warnings. "Tiger, 11 o'clock! Firefly, where are you?" But often, there was no Firefly. Often, there was just the chilling realization that their own 75mm or 76mm guns, so effective against earlier German models, were utterly useless against this steel behemoth. Round after round would bounce off its thick hide, like pebbles skittering off a rock. The frustration, the helplessness was palpable. The German Tiger I was a marvel of its time, weighing in at a staggering 56 tons. Its frontal armor was an almost impenetrable 100mm thick, angled to maximize deflection. Its side and rear armor, while thinner, still presented a formidable challenge. But it was the KWK-36 L56 88mm gun that truly struck fear into Allied crews. This gun, derived from the legendary Flak 36 anti-aircraft cannon, could penetrate the frontal armor of most Allied tanks from over a mile away, long before those tanks could even hope to return fire effectively. The range advantage was crucial, allowing Tigers to engage and destroy multiple enemy vehicles while remaining safely out of harm's way. The Tiger's designers had prioritized protection and firepower above all else, creating a truly fearsome predator for the battlefield. Its impact on the battlefield was immediate and devastating. Early encounters in North Africa and the Eastern Front saw individual Tiger tanks annihilate entire companies of Allied armor. Accounts from tankers described the sheer terror of watching their shells simply shatter or deflect, leaving them vulnerable to the Tiger's inevitable decisive counterpunch. A single Tiger could hold a strategic position against overwhelming odds, buying precious time for German forces or spearheading a brutal counterattack. For the Allied High Command, the Tiger wasn't just a tactical problem, it was a strategic nightmare. How do you fight a tank that seemingly cannot be killed? How do you maintain an offensive when your armor is so clearly outclassed? The answer, they knew, lay in innovation. The war was not just a clash of armies and ideologies, it was a relentless technological race. Every new weapon developed on one side demanded a counter on the other. And against the Tiger, a counter was desperately needed. The problem was multifaceted. Allied tank guns simply lacked the muzzle velocity and projectile mass to reliably defeat the Tiger's thick armor. Standard armor-piercing, AP rounds designed to punch through steel were failing. High explosive shells were useless. The challenge was immense, requiring a radical rethinking of how armor was penetrated. It demanded a leap of scientific imagination, a forging of new materials, and a complete reevaluation of ballistic principles. The very survival of Allied armored warfare on the Western Front hung in the balance. The urgency intensified with the looming prospect of a full-scale invasion of Western Europe. Operation Overlord, the D-Day landings, would plunge hundreds of thousands of Allied soldiers into the heart of German-occupied territory. They would face the best of the Wehrmacht, and that meant encountering Tiger tanks in greater numbers than ever before, defending their homeland with ferocity. Without a reliable answer to the Tiger, the casualties would be catastrophic, the advance perhaps stalled indefinitely. The stakes could not have been higher.
The fate of the entire Western Front, indeed the fate of the war itself, seemed to hinge on finding a way to defeat this seemingly unbeatable foe. This wasn't just about winning a battle, it was about evening the odds, about giving Allied tankers a fighting chance, about restoring confidence and momentum to the grand strategic push toward Berlin. The call went out to scientists and engineers across the Allied nations: find a solution, and find it fast. In the quiet, often overlooked research laboratories and proving grounds, far from the roar of battle, a different kind of war was being waged. It was a war of minds, of equations, of metallurgy and ballistics. The challenge was immense: how to deliver enough kinetic energy into a concentrated point to defeat 100 millimeters of hardened steel. Conventional wisdom suggested bigger guns, heavier shells. But simply scaling up existing designs presented huge logistical and technical hurdles. A larger gun meant a larger tank, slower production, and incompatibility with existing doctrines. A new approach was needed, one that focused on efficiency and ingenuity rather than sheer brute force. And it was in this crucible of necessity that a revolutionary concept began to take shape, one that would redefine tank warfare for decades to come: the armor-piercing discarding sabot, or APDS round. The core idea behind APDS was elegant in its simplicity, yet complex in its execution. Instead of relying on a full-caliber projectile, which meant a relatively large, heavy shell that lost velocity quickly, what if a much smaller, denser, and faster projectile could be fired? The problem was, how do you fire a sub-caliber projectile from a standard caliber gun without losing gas pressure and accuracy? The answer lay in the sabot. Imagine a tight-fitting sleeve, or sabot, that cradles a much smaller, needle-like penetrator. This sabot ensures the full force of the gun's propellant gases is transferred to the projectile, giving it immense initial velocity as it travels down the barrel. Once outside the barrel, aerodynamic forces, often aided by small gas release ports or friction, cause the lighter sabot to break away and fall off, leaving the super-dense, high-velocity penetrator to continue its flight path toward the target. This was a radical departure from traditional ammunition design. The key advantage was speed. By reducing the frontal area and mass of the actual penetrator while maintaining a large propelling surface within the barrel, incredibly high muzzle velocities could be achieved. This translated directly into superior kinetic energy at impact, allowing a smaller projectile to punch through armor that would shrug off a much larger but slower conventional shell. The penetrator itself was made of a material chosen for its extreme density and hardness. For the Allied effort, this meant tungsten. Tungsten, a rare and heavy metal, was the ideal choice. Its density, nearly twice that of steel, meant that a relatively small tungsten core packed an enormous amount of mass, and therefore kinetic energy. Its extreme hardness ensured that the penetrator wouldn't deform or shatter upon impact, but would instead concentrate all its force on a tiny point, literally punching a hole through the toughest armor. The scientists and engineers working on this project, many of them in Canadian research facilities, faced immense challenges. Crafting a stable sabot that would effectively transfer energy and then reliably discard itself was no easy feat. Precision machining, advanced metallurgy for the tungsten core, and complex ballistics calculations were all required. The initial prototypes were temperamental. Sometimes the sabot wouldn't discard cleanly, affecting accuracy, or the penetrator itself wouldn't be stable in flight. Yet, through countless hours of experimentation, simulation, and live fire testing, the kinks were gradually worked out. The Canadian contribution to this development was pivotal, particularly in the refinement of the sabot design and manufacturing processes. Many had witnessed firsthand the futility of engaging a Tiger with their standard ammunition. The memory of shells bouncing off, of comrades lost to the devastating 88mm gun, was deeply ingrained. Now they were being told that this new round, this tungsten-cored needle, could pierce that legendary armor. They had to be convinced, not just intellectually, but emotionally. Training focused on precision. While APDS offered superior penetration, hitting a small, moving target at long range still required immense skill. Crews practiced ranging, leading targets, and coordinating fire. They learned the ballistic characteristics of the APDS round, its flatter trajectory at long ranges, its unique impact characteristics. Crucially, they were shown the results of firing APDS against captured German armor, or against mock-ups designed to replicate the Tiger's formidable defenses. Seeing those tungsten cores punch clean through thick steel, leaving neat, devastating holes, began to turn skepticism into belief and belief into confidence. The psychological impact of knowing they finally had a weapon capable of defeating the Tiger was immense. It replaced the dread with a sense of purpose, the helplessness with a renewed fighting spirit. The secrecy surrounding APDS remained paramount. Allied commanders understood that the element of surprise could be a significant tactical advantage. German intelligence was always keen to learn about new Allied technologies, and the effectiveness of APDS against their premier tank could not be revealed prematurely. Crews were cautioned, specific orders given regarding the disposal of spent sabots and unexpended rounds in the event of tank loss or capture. The Firefly's distinct silhouette, particularly its long barrel, was sometimes camouflaged to appear shorter, though this was rarely effective in the chaos of battle. The aim was to allow the Tigers to engage, confident in their invulnerability, only to be met by a devastating, unexpected counterpunch. This quiet revolution, unfolding in training fields and behind closed doors, was building towards a decisive confrontation that would soon alter the course of armored warfare. As the summer of 1944 dawned, the stage was set for the greatest amphibious invasion in history. D-Day, June 6th, saw Allied forces storm the beaches of Normandy. The initial days and weeks of the campaign were brutal. The bocage country of Normandy, with its dense hedgerows and sunken lanes, proved to be ideal defensive terrain for the Germans. Every field became a fortified position, every hedgerow a deadly ambush point. German resistance was fierce, and among their formidable defenses were the dreaded Tiger tanks, often deployed in reserve or as mobile fire support, ready to counterattack any Allied breakthrough. The early tank battles in Normandy were a stark reminder of the Tiger's enduring power. Shermans, Cromwells, and Churchills often found themselves outgunned and outmatched. Casualties mounted. The fear of the Tiger was still very real. But this time, something was different. Hidden among the regular tanks, often deliberately camouflaged, were the Fireflies, carrying their potent 17-pounder guns and a precious cargo of APDS rounds. Their presence was a quiet promise, a beacon of hope for the beleaguered tankers. Consider the heat of battle in a small Norman village, perhaps during Operation Goodwood or Totalize. A troop of Canadian Shermans pushing forward comes under sudden, intense fire. The distinctive flash and roar of an 88mm gun echo through the narrow streets. A Sherman erupts in flame, its crew scrambling out, some wounded, some fatally struck. The radio operator screams, "Tiger, right flank, behind the church!" Panic begins to set in. The remaining Shermans try to maneuver, but the streets are narrow, the hedges thick. Another Sherman is hit, disabled. The situation is desperate. Then, from behind a stone wall, a longer barrel emerges. It's a Firefly, commanded by a seasoned Canadian tanker, Sergeant Williams. His gunner, Corporal Davies, has seen the fear in his comrades' eyes, felt the cold dread himself many times before. But today, they have the APDS. Davies takes a deep breath, his eye pressed against the sight. The Tiger, unaware of the new threat, is now traversing its turret, lining up another shot on a trapped Sherman. It looks impossibly huge, invulnerable. But Davies remembers the training, the demonstrations, the clean holes punched through thick steel. He adjusts for range, for the slight movement of the tank, for the wind. He feels the collective weight of expectation, the desperate hope of his troop, the fate of the advance resting on this one shot. "Sabot, loaded!" the loader yells, his voice tight with anticipation. "Target, Tiger, behind the church, range 1,000, Sergeant Williams commands. Davies holds his breath. His finger tightens on the firing trigger. Firing! The 17-pounder barks, a sharper, more distinct crack than the standard Sherman gun. There's a brilliant flash from the muzzle and a blur as the sabot-encased projectile streaks towards its target. Time seems to slow. The German Tiger crew, perhaps hearing the different report of the gun, perhaps sensing a new threat, begins to traverse their turret back, but it's too late. The APDS round, a tiny, dense dart of tungsten, strikes the Tiger's frontal armor with astonishing force. Instead of bouncing or shattering, it punches clean through, a white-hot spear of metal piercing the legendary steel. Inside the Tiger, chaos erupts. The tungsten penetrator, traveling at incredible velocity, generates immense heat and pressure, spraying deadly spall, fragments of molten metal and armor, throughout the fighting compartment. Ammunition might detonate, fuel tanks could rupture, fire spreads rapidly. The Tiger, which moments before was an instrument of terror, now becomes a burning tomb. Its massive 88mm gun slowly drops, rendered useless.
Thick black smoke billows from its hatches. The remaining Shermans, witnessing this incredible feat, let out a collective cheer, a mix of relief, exhilaration, and sheer disbelief. The unbeaten had been beaten, the myth had been shattered. This scenario, a composite of many real encounters, exemplifies the turning point APDS represented. It wasn't just about destroying a tank, it was about destroying a legend, about breaking a psychological stranglehold. The Fireflies, often operating in pairs or as dedicated tiger hunters, quickly earned a fearsome reputation among the Germans. While tigers were still dangerous, their invulnerability was gone. Allied gunners, armed with APDS, now knew they had a fighting chance. This was the moment science met strategy, courage met ingenuity, and the tide of armored warfare began to turn on the Western Front. The Battle of Normandy, a grueling and costly campaign, saw countless such duels, with the Canadian-developed APDS round proving its worth time and again, forever altering the dynamics of tank combat. The impact of APDS was immediate and far-reaching. The psychological barrier that the Tiger tank had imposed on Allied forces crumbled. No longer was an encounter with a Tiger an almost certain death sentence. Now, Allied tank crews, especially those operating the Sherman Firefly or other 17-pounder armed vehicles, knew they possessed a weapon capable of punching through the Tiger's legendary armor. This shift in perception was critical. It infused a new sense of confidence and aggression into Allied armored units, allowing them to press attacks with greater determination, knowing they could, if positioned correctly and with a skilled gunner, destroy the most formidable German tanks. From the German perspective, the emergence of APDS and the Firefly was a rude awakening. Their superior heavy tanks, once considered invincible, were now demonstrably vulnerable. German tank commanders, who had grown accustomed to engaging Allied armor from long ranges with impunity, now had to exercise far greater caution. They began to prioritize flank attacks, ambushes, and hull-down positions, trying to negate the Firefly's powerful frontal penetration capabilities. The distinct profile of the Firefly's longer barrel made it an immediate priority target for German gunners. If a Firefly was spotted, every effort would be made to destroy it first, before it could unleash its deadly tungsten darts. This tactical shift acknowledged the new threat and fundamentally changed how German heavy tanks operated. However, it's crucial to understand that APDS, while revolutionary, was not a magic bullet. The Tiger I remained a potent weapon, capable of inflicting terrible damage. Its 88mm guns still outranged many Allied tanks, and its armor, while penetrable by APDS, still provided excellent protection against standard rounds.
The journey began not with a roar of cannons, but with the quiet hum of scientific inquiry. In laboratories across Canada and Britain, brilliant minds were grappling with a problem that threatened to undermine the entire Allied war effort. The German Tiger I tank, with its thick armor and devastating 88mm gun, was proving impervious to all conventional Allied anti-tank weapons. Shells simply bounced off its sloped hull, leaving Allied tank crews frustrated, vulnerable, and often dead. The strategic implications were dire. How could an invasion of Fortress Europe succeed if the spearhead of the German defense, its heavy armor, could not be defeated? This was the crucible from which APDS, the armor-piercing discarding sabot, would emerge. The conventional wisdom of armor penetration focused on two main factors: the mass of the projectile and its velocity. A heavier shell, traveling faster, generally delivered more kinetic energy on impact, increasing its chances of punching through steel. But there were limits. Existing Allied tank guns, like the British 75mm or the American 76mm, simply couldn't generate the necessary muzzle velocity or accommodate a projectile heavy enough to reliably defeat the Tiger's 100mm frontal plate. Engineers faced a dilemma: either design entirely new, much larger tanks with heavier guns, a time-consuming and logistically challenging endeavor, or find a radically different way to deliver penetration. The solution, it turned out, was to rethink the projectile itself. Instead of making the entire shell heavier, what if the actual penetrator, the part that does the punching, could be made incredibly dense and small, then accelerated to extreme velocities? This was the conceptual leap that led to the APDS. The idea was to use a sabot, a lightweight casing that would fit snugly within the gun barrel, allowing the full force of the propellant gases to accelerate a much smaller, sub-caliber penetrator.
Once the sabot and penetrator left the barrel, aerodynamic forces would cause the lighter sabot to fall away, leaving the dense, needle-like penetrator to continue its flight path with minimal air resistance and maximum velocity. The material choice for this penetrator was critical. It needed to be incredibly hard to resist deformation upon impact and incredibly dense to maximize kinetic energy in a small volume. Tungsten, a metal known for its extreme density, nearly twice that of steel, and hardness, was the ideal candidate. Sourcing and machining tungsten, particularly under wartime conditions, presented significant challenges. Tungsten was a strategic material, primarily used for cutting tools and light bulb filaments. Transforming it into precision anti-tank projectiles required new manufacturing processes and a deep understanding of metallurgy. Canadian scientists and engineers played a crucial role in these developments. While the concept of a sub-caliber round had been explored before, and the British 17-pounder anti-tank gun provided the necessary high-velocity platform, it was the refinement of the sabot design and the practical application of tungsten as a penetrator material that truly brought APDS to fruition. Canadian research facilities, with their expertise in material science and ballistics, contributed significantly to overcoming the complex engineering hurdles. They grappled with issues such as sabot separation stability, ensuring the penetrator remained accurate after discarding its casing, and optimizing the shape of the tungsten core for maximum penetration. The initial testing of APDS rounds was met with a mixture of awe and disbelief. Footage from proving grounds showed the 17-pounder firing its revolutionary new ammunition, punching clean holes through thick German armor plate that had previously proven impervious to all other Allied rounds. The penetrators created clean, circular holes, often leaving a distinctive star-shaped spall pattern on the far side of the armor, a testament to the concentrated force of the tungsten dart. This was not just a theoretical improvement, it was a visible, undeniable demonstration of a technological breakthrough. The unbeatable Tiger now had a definitive counter. The success of APDS, however, was inextricably linked to the gun that would fire it. The British 17-pounder was a formidable weapon, developed as a dedicated anti-tank gun even before the full threat of the Tiger was known. Its long barrel and powerful propellant charge gave it the high muzzle velocity necessary to maximize the effectiveness of the APDS round. The challenge then became how to integrate this powerful gun into a mobile, combat-ready platform. Mounting it on a towed carriage was useful for static defense, but modern warfare demanded a self-propelled solution. The American M4 Sherman tank, while a workhorse of the Allied forces, was notoriously undergunned against the Tiger. Its 75mm and even 76mm guns struggled to penetrate the Tiger's frontal armor except at very close ranges or from the flanks. The British, recognizing the potential of the 17-pounder and APDS combination, embarked on a daring modification program. They took the standard Sherman chassis and redesigned its turret to accommodate the massive 17-pounder. This transformed the M4 Sherman into the Sherman Firefly. The conversion was extensive. The main gun's breech mechanism was so large that the radio operator's position in the hull had to be removed, and his duties transferred to the commander. Ammunition stowage was reconfigured, and often a counterweight was added to the rear of the turret to balance the heavy gun. The distinctive long barrel, often fitted with a large muzzle brake, made the Firefly easily recognizable on the battlefield, a feature that German tank crews quickly learned to fear. Despite the compromises, the Firefly proved to be an inspired solution, allowing the Allies to rapidly field a tank that could stand its ground against the Tiger. The production of Fireflies and APDS rounds ramped up quickly in the months leading up to D-Day. Factories worked around the clock, converting standard Shermans, building 17-pounder guns, and forging tungsten penetrators. The logistical challenge of supplying these new tanks and specialized ammunition to the front lines was immense, but the strategic necessity overshadowed all difficulties. Allied commanders understood that the success of the invasion and the lives of countless soldiers depended on having an effective counter to German heavy armor. For the tank crews designated to operate the Fireflies, the training was intense and focused. Many had experienced the terror of facing Tigers firsthand, watching their own rounds bounce harmlessly off the enemy's armor. They had seen comrades die in futile engagements. Now they were told they had a new weapon, one that could pierce the seemingly impenetrable. Skepticism was natural, but rigorous training and live fire demonstrations against captured or simulated German armor quickly transformed that skepticism into cautious optimism, and then into fierce confidence. They learned the intricacies of the APDS round, its flatter trajectory at long ranges, its precision requirements, and the devastating effect it had upon impact. Gunners were drilled endlessly on ranging and leading targets, understanding that while the APDS offered superior penetration, a precise hit was still paramount.
The psychological boost of knowing they finally had a fighting chance was immeasurable. It instilled a renewed sense of purpose and courage, replacing the dread of encountering a tiger with a grim determination to defeat it. Secrecy remained a top priority. The element of surprise was a crucial tactical advantage. As the Allied forces landed on the beaches of Normandy in June 1944, they were met by determined German resistance. The unique bocage terrain, with its dense hedgerows and sunken lanes, created a labyrinthine battlefield, ideal for defensive ambushes and close-quarter tank engagements. It was here, amidst the narrow lanes and small villages, that the Firefly and its APDS rounds would truly be put to the test. The early days of the campaign were brutal, with Allied tanks suffering heavy losses to German anti-tank guns and the dreaded Tigers. The fear of the Tiger was still a palpable presence on the battlefield. But this time, the Tigers were not invincible. Hidden within the Allied columns, often camouflaged to appear as regular Shermans, were the Fireflies, waiting for their moment. Imagine the scene, a column of Canadian tanks pushing through a narrow track flanked by high hedgerows. Suddenly, the lead tank explodes in a burst of flame and shrapnel. A chilling roar echoes through the trees, a sound instantly recognizable to any veteran tanker. "Tiger, 11 o'clock, behind the barn." The radio crackles with frantic urgency. The remaining tanks scramble for cover, their 75mm guns useless against the new threat. Then, from a concealed position, a Firefly, commanded by a seasoned sergeant, maneuvers into position. His gunner, a young corporal, feels his heart pounding in his chest. He's seen what Tigers can do, but he's also seen what APDS can do. His hands are steady as he tracks the massive German tank emerging from the smoke. The Tiger, confident in its armor, begins to traverse its turret, lining up another shot. "Sabot loaded," the loader shouts, his voice strained. The corporal takes a deep breath, focusing on the Tiger's front glacis plate. This is it. This is the moment they've trained for, the moment they've hoped for. Fire! The 17-pounder barks, a sharp, concussive crack that stands out from the lighter reports of the other Shermans. A streak of tungsten flashes across the battlefield. It strikes the Tiger's frontal armor with immense force, not shattering or deflecting, but punching through, a bright spark marking the point of impact. Inside the Tiger, the tungsten dart rips through the fighting compartment, spraying superheated metal and igniting ammunition. The Tiger shudders, its powerful engine stalls, and thick black smoke begins to pour from its hatches. Its gun, which moments before was poised to deliver death, now droops silently. The relief among the Allied tankers is immediate and overwhelming. A collective cheer erupts across the radio net. The impossible has happened. The unbeatable Tiger has been destroyed. This wasn't just a kill, it was a psychological victory, a moment that fundamentally shifted the balance of power in armored warfare. The myth of the Tiger's invincibility was shattered, replaced by the grim reality that it too could be destroyed. The Fireflies, armed with their Canadian-developed APDS rounds, had proven their worth, turning the tide in countless desperate engagements across the Norman hedgerows. This pivotal confrontation in Normandy solidified the reputation of APDS as a true Tiger killer. While the Tiger I remained a dangerous opponent, its perceived invulnerability was gone. Allied tank crews, armed with the knowledge that their Fireflies could penetrate its armor, approached engagements with renewed confidence. The psychological impact on both sides was profound. German tank commanders, who once operated with a sense of impunity, now had to factor in the threat of APDS-equipped vehicles, leading to more cautious tactics and a greater emphasis on ambush and flanking maneuvers. The distinctive long barrel of the Firefly became a priority target for German gunners, a recognition of its devastating capabilities. The success of APDS was a testament to the collaborative spirit of Allied scientific and engineering efforts. While the British developed the formidable 17-pounder gun and the Americans provided the reliable Sherman chassis, the significant contributions of Canadian researchers in refining the APDS round itself, particularly in metallurgy, sabot design, and ballistic stability, were crucial to its battlefield effectiveness. It was a multinational triumph, born out of shared necessity and a common goal to overcome a seemingly insurmountable enemy. This scientific ingenuity, combined with the immense courage of the tank crews who wielded these new weapons, fundamentally altered the course of armored warfare in World War II. The legacy of APDS extends far beyond the battlefields of Normandy. The fundamental principles behind its design, a sub-caliber, high-density penetrator accelerated to extreme velocities by a discarding sabot, became the foundation for future generations of anti-tank ammunition. Post-war tank development continued to refine these concepts, leading to even more potent rounds like APFSD, armor-piercing fin-stabilized discarding sabot, which remains the standard for modern main battle tank guns. The core idea, born out of the desperate need to defeat the Tiger, continues to shape tank design and anti-armor tactics to this very day. The story of the Canadian APDS versus the German Tiger is more than just a chapter in military history. It is a powerful narrative of human innovation, resilience, and courage in the face of overwhelming odds. It reminds us that even against the most fearsome and technologically advanced weapons, ingenuity and determination can forge a counter.
From the quiet intensity of research labs to the chaos and terror of the battlefield, the development and deployment of APDS represents a true turning point, not just in World War II, but in the evolution of armored warfare itself. It's a compelling testament to how science, when married with strategic thinking and human bravery, can indeed turn the tide of battle. It is a story of how a small, dense dart of tungsten helped to break the back of German heavy armor and paved the way for Allied victory on the Western Front.